Hey, everybody. Now you will hear a brief retelling of the movie Prisoner or Enjoy the Movie. Danish Rune Peterson was taken to a prison that at first glance looks more like a student dormitory, only with bars on the windows and thwarted by repeat offenders in the neighborhood. The guard ordered Rune to strip naked, squat, show his palms, open his mouth and muss his hair. Rune is a 2-year-old and he is very unlucky to be in the 4th ward. There are real animals here and they are already waiting for the new guy. In the hallway, the tattooed, shaved-headed sitter stared at him with a smirk. Rune left his things in the cell and went to ask the guard for cleaning supplies to clean up, and when he came back there was a rough-looking guy sitting on his bunk. After steaming at Rune, he took the mattress and dragged it back to his cell. Clone told Okrenik that the newcomer didn't need the mattress and that Runs had asked him to take it. While the guard was dispersing everyone to their cells, the mattress was taken from the poor man. The blonde only had to put a sheet on top of the board after Rune went out for a walk, where he was immediately attacked by a convict nicknamed the Bricklayer and said that Rune had cut up his friend on the outside. He ordered the newcomer to finish off the red-jacketed Umbo, or they'd mob him and beat him up. Rune took a lap around the treadmill to memorize his future victim's face. He went back to the cell and scrubbed it for hours. When he was done, Rune sat down on a couch in the recreation room next to a stonemason who was hanging out and out of the blue threw tea in Rune's face, supposedly because he was smirking at him. The stonemason was driven away by authority and reminded the newcomers that he had agreed to do something for them. That man in red is called the Albanian and he will have to have all his teeth knocked out. The best time to do it is during a walk on the 2nd floor, when there are no wardens around. At first Rune obliged his fists with his socks, but then he just put the billiard ball in his pocket. As the Albanian was coming down the stairs, Rune pretended that his shoelace had come untied and letting his target walk forward, he threw a pillowcase over the Albanian's head and began hammering him unconscious with the ball. The man fell down the stairs, but the corporal punishment wasn't over yet. Rune flipped the Albanian over and began knocking his teeth out against the step. Rune opened the pillowcase to check his work and immediately afterward went for a run in the yard. The warden's siren sounded and all the cons were huddled together, searched and their hands checked. Rune noticed a bloody stain on his sweatshirt and stuffed it under the sleeve of his jacket. When it was his turn, the guard examined his hands, groped them, and finding nothing, allowed him to return to the enclosure. The first thing Rune did was to take off his clothes and throw them in the washing machine, wash his body. He seemed to have succeeded in doing the job without giving himself away, but after lights out the guard Kim took Rune into another cell, ordered him to undress and began to interrogate him on whose orders he had done it. Who he served before. Rune denied everything, and when Kim stepped on his foot, he pushed the guard aside. The prisoner was twisted and face down on the floor. Rune never confessed to anything and was thrown into isolation. When he returned, he decided to decorate his cell by hanging pictures of his girlfriend on the wall, but when the mason entered, Rune tried to hide the pictures behind his back. The stonemason appreciated how clean the newcomer's cell was. The stonemason plopped down on Runa's bed and sent him to the other cell. Someone had jerked the jolt there and Mr. Proper could work at his pleasure. The stonemason ordered Runa to open his mouth to throw grapes in it. He invited the other scary convict soon here to admire Runa's girl. The newcomer himself went to clean the toilet. After he cleaned the mason's camera and to prove that it became clean, he had to lie down on the mat. The hero was ordered to assume the fetal position and suck his finger. At the same time, the bricklayer drew his girlfriend's dick and kept one of the photos for himself. Suna, the newcomer, must also obey unquestioningly. Back in his cell, Rune began sharpening his knife against a rock. He was put to work in the kitchen, where he met another prisoner, Rasheed. He's only a year into his sentence. Looking out the window, Runa noticed something. With the help of a mirror, he saw something being lifted from one cell to another by a rope, but the couriers were immediately covered by the guards. The main cons spend a lot of time in the rocking cell. The Runes are there to serve a towel and wipe the barbell shaft. The authoritative was on his way to the bricklayer, saying he can't find normal couriers to transport the goods. They're always getting scorched. Once the local cleaning lady was ordered to soap up the windows of the security booth so that they could do some business. Runa frosted the guards, at which time a guy was taken to the toilet and soon the alarm sounded. The man in the toilet had been brutally beaten, and Runa would now have to clean the blood off the floor and walls and collect his teeth. The authoritative and the bricklayer have piled into his cell to discuss matters of the day, who to break his head and who to pin down so that they don't relax. 6 stand guard and serve them. One day while scrubbing the toilet, Runa discovered a door in the riser and something occurred to him. He called his grandmother to ask her to visit him and bring him a Kinder Surprise. Then Runa asked Rasheed to find out if there was the same door in the toilet on his floor. Granny immediately came to Runa's house as promised. She brought her grandson his favorite chocolate eggs. The woman remembers going to the zoo with Runa. He grew up a happy child. One day that would end and the white streak would begin. The boy got what he wanted and didn't even want to hug his grandmother goodbye. Rasheed found out there's a door and a hand can fit through it. Tonight at exactly 7 p.m. Runa would bring something down to him and he would have to catch it and take it away. Tapping the pipe, Runa threw the egg into the toilet and flushed the water. The next day Rasheed came with this egg to the warehouse. They successfully tested the delivery method and Runa showed up at the authority with a business proposal. He asked the stonemason to leave. Runa realized that the bandits could not normally deliver the goods to another floor, and he came up with the best scheme for it. In the evening, Klaus came to his cell. Since he's new to the business, he's got something for him. The man sat down on a bucket and took a shit right there in the cell. Without saying anything, Klaus went out into the corridor, but Runa cleaned the goods from the excrement and threw it to Rasheed. The floor below everything worked out, and in the morning his partner handed the businessman a bundle of money. All the dough is there, down to the last crumb. Runa took it to Klaus, who counted it and made it clear that the deal had been a success. The authorities appreciated the boy's cleverness and moved him to a cell with a nice view of the city and a mattress on the bed. The chief also invited Runa to come play poker with them. The authority even gave him back a picture of the girl the bricklayer had taken away. Runa was also admitted to a soccer match between parrots. As soon as the convicts did not entertain themselves behind bars, the parrots flew out of the cage. The prisoners caught them very carefully. They treat their pets much better than their own kind. Runa's life seems to be getting better. He and Rasheed became friends. Business was going on slowly and the old-timers seemed to have taken him for their own, but then during a game of soccer he was pulled up by Bashir, the head of Rasheed's floor, and threatened that either he would be involved or the bricklayer would find out about everything, because Runa was doing business with an authority bypassing his right hand. Runa is upset because no one could have found out about their scheme. Now he and his comrade are worthless. Blondie will be a regular 6 again. Rasheed says he was forced to confess. The next time they meet, Bashir says he needs twice as much merchandise. Tonight, he also gave Runa the news that the Albanian had returned from the infirmary. Runa had no choice, so he told the authorities that he would send twice as much merchandise tonight. The boy didn't like it, but he agreed. If anything happened to the goods, only Runa would be responsible. If anything, he would just be put down. In the evening, 2 Kinder Surprises were flushed down the toilet. Runa couldn't sleep that night. After a good job in the canteen, he came to the locker room to get the dough, but Rasheed had no money and it was no joke. Runa goes through Rasheed's stuff and then pins him from behind. He demands to get his money any way he can. The Albanian-led Trinity walks on the treadmill again. In the evening, Runa informs the gang with a nervous smile that they've been screwed. Runa's face drooped because he had been warned that he was the only one responsible for the goods. He called his grandmother again and asked if she had any savings. Alas, the woman couldn't help him either. It was time to pray. In the evening, a bricklayer came to Runa's cell. The newcomer owed a lot of money and the goods had been intercepted by their enemies. The only reason Runa hadn't killed the Albanian was because he was covered by an authority figure, so he'd better think of something. In a panic, the blonde just jumped Rasheed, demanding his money. But he quickly put him down. The distraught intruder was mobbed by the guards and tied to the bed with belts and left lying there, throwing a pillow and a blanket on his face. By evening, the convict calmed down and wet himself. At last, the offender returned to his cell, where the first thing he did was to take out the knife he had stashed. With it, he quickly went to the shower, and when he turned on the water, he started to look around, worrying about his heel. He almost stabbed Klaus, but he had just come to wash up. Rune decided to get rid of his hair and shaved his head. In the kitchen, Rasheed came up to him and told him he still wanted to be in business and he supposedly had nothing to do with it. The guards took the money from him and his friend asked him to come out and have a word with him. Rasheed took Runa into the freezer and immediately closed the door behind him. After waiting for a while, Rasheed nervously washed the dishes, and after a while he opened the door, where the bricklayer and the Albanian came out. Curiosity got the best of him and Rasheed decided to see how the rooms were doing. There was blood all over the floor, 2 knives lying nearby, and his friend was dead. Rasheed clearly didn't expect rooms to just get knifed. He continued washing dishes until another inmate started calling for guards. Rasheed, of course, said he didn't see who went into the freezer. In the courtyard, the mason decided to talk to him to find out if he had blabbed, and then began to tell him about coffee for snitches. You take a pot, pour vegetable oil into it, and pour half a kilo of sugar, boil it all, the sugar dissolves in the oil, then you go to the sleeping snitch and pour the wonderful brew on his body. There was a songbird here that did that. They had never heard anyone scream so loud. Bashir let the 6 sit down and eat with the chiefs, then he looked into his cell and began to convince Rasheed that he had no other choice. That's the way it is here. The scheme continued without Runa. Rasheed still catches Kinder's eggs, puts them in a condom, smears them with lipstick and shoves them up his ass. Rasheed also cleans up after everyone on his floor. In the restroom, he was hoping to get a quick testicle off in his cell, but he has a date coming up and the convict will have to support him inside himself for now. Rasheed's mom and younger brother come to visit. The woman is crying, she misses her son very much, and also asks if he does not forget to pray. Rasheed himself is silent, probably he is thinking how he could return to the cell as soon as possible and finally get an egg out of himself. Rasheed hides his kinders inside the lamp. Like his friend, the guy decided to shave his head. Rasheed is anxious, he gets the goods and brooded in the middle of the night. Rasheed asked the guard Kim to take him to the mosque for the first time ever. There he gets a kinder and tells the guard he knows where it comes from here. Rasheed only has 3 months left to serve. Kim advised him to just not do it anymore. Just then Rasheed ratted out the bricklayer and the Albanian, they're the ones who stabbed Runa. After all the confessions, Rasheed finally prayed. The guy stayed up all night, but then he did pass out. Bashir entered his cell and demanded the goods. After the 6 were brutally beaten with soap, which was stuffed in a pillowcase, Rasheed hoped that the corporal punishment was over, but then Bashir splashed coffee for snitches in his face. The authoritative was twisted and the mutilated Rasheed ran out of the cell with an inhuman scream.